Okay, 6 months later, Pursuit of Balance, Season 2, Episode 1. We're back in action. Super stoked to bring this back. I mean, honestly, since January, I've not been running the podcast, as most of you know. This has been a podcast that's kind of just run in conjunction with everything that was going on at the gym with Functional Lifestyles. Pursuit of Balance was the name of the show, and I wanted to have something that just had another platform for us to be able to showcase, a little bit more education on what we talk about inside the gym, right? Which is a lot of what I want to cover today. I mean, the whole relaunch of the actual show itself came from losing Evan, as some of you guys know who he was, which was helping me out with all the content, the videography on the backside. We got a new team, so Chaz and Elliot are going to help me run with this kind of kickoff and everything here. So you guys are going to see a much higher production value with the video and the audio, and so I'm super, super stoked on just kind of bringing everything back. So we're going to go back to those weekly launches. Basically, the goal of the podcast is going to be trying to do hopefully monthly ones with a guest as well that are maybe going to be a little bit longer format, but a lot of the same kind of snippets of what I was doing before. I personally love podcasts that are 15 to 30 minutes long where I can just listen to on the drive home. And that's kind of the exact same format that I'm trying to keep here. A lot of the same kind of methodology, a lot of the same kind of talking points on everything that we're talking about. So health, wellness, fitness, business, mindset, everything that I was kind of talking about, we're going to stick with those same subjects. So what I wanted to do today for season 2, episode 1, is I wanted to kind of just go a little bit more of a background, right? I think a lot of us, just to kind of give you guys a quick little insight since I last shot, 6 months ago, I've opened up a new location with Palo Alto. I've gotten married. We probably have 200 new clients since the beginning of the year. So there's going to be a lot of new listeners, a lot of new faces watching this. So I really want to give you guys a little bit of background more on myself first, Functional Lifestyles as a business, and Pursuit of Balance as a show. All these things, obviously being separate entities, I still want them to understand that they are vertically integrated. These are all things that kind of support each other. A big part of my life has always been my business in the gym and Functional Lifestyles. And the show has just always been, an easy outlet for me to kind of share a little bit more of what I'm really passionate about and just the mission in general of helping more people get better, become happier, and get healthier overall. So today's episode is really just going to go through a little bit of a background on myself, the evolution of how we got to the Functional Lifestyles, the gym, kind of stepping into the Pursuit of Balance, the show itself. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about the mission of the platforms and then really just kind of the goals overall, like where we're trying to take all these things from an individual level, the gym level, and most importantly, what we're talking about today with the show itself. So background first, this is a very popular question I get with new clients is like, how did you get started? What was the thing that really got you into the industry? And the answer for me is a little bit different than a lot of people. When I say this, I literally mean that I was born in the industry. There's a picture of my mom working out, and she used to teach aerobic classes at 24 Hour Fitness, and I'm sleeping in the backpack, as I was a little baby, a couple months old, probably, who knows, knowing my mom. But, I grew up in the daycare at 24 Hour Fitness. That's always was my babysitter is what I told people. So working out was something that probably started around high school, was always involved with sports my entire life. My parents were always working out, both sides, my mom and my dad. And, middle of high school, I started going to the gym with them. And that's how I got my first job. So my first job getting into the industry, I was 17 years old. I think I was a senior, maybe a junior. So like 16 or 17 years old when I got into it. And I knew just from sports in general, right? Like lacrosse was definitely my favorite sport, but grew up playing a lot of soccer, a lot of baseball. Football was always just very active. Activity for me was just something that like borderline ADHD of like I need to be doing something outside. So getting in the gym was definitely an outlet that I knew I just generally had a lot of passion on a personal level. And it probably took me less than a year of just exercising with my parents and then going with my best friend and my brother before school that I just immediately kind of had that calling that I was like, this is what I want to do for a living. I want to be able to work out with people. I want to be able to train people. I want to work in the gym. I love the environment. I love the community that's surrounded by it. So that was how I got into it. And I started through I did graveyard front desk, and then I went to front desk, and then I got into a little bit of sales at Extreme Fitness. And then I went into sales and management at Gilroy Health and Fitness. Then I moved from Morgan Hill up to Campbell, where I'm still at currently. Worked at Bay Area Family Fitness, worked at San Jose Barbell, worked at NC Fit, which was NorCal CrossFit at the time, and Bay Club and Equinox, and then eventually getting into Functional Lifestyles, doing my own thing. But the entire journey for me, a lot of it came from the sales and management background in the beginning parts of it and just kind of like just the customer relations side, which I've always really, really enjoyed. I think it's something that's really, as far as my career goes, allowed me to kind of grow pretty fast. But then training was something that was just naturally I gravitated towards just because of the passion that I had towards training, right? So this was 2017 when I opened up Functional Lifestyle. So around 2016, 2015, I was working out at Equinox, and this is kind of where the Functional Lifestyles like actually started. It started from ideation, as always, of like, okay, I know I want to do something. I don't know if I'm mature enough yet. I don't know if I'm financially there yet. And throughout these conversations that I would have with clients, one of my clients at the time was like, I'll fund it, like I'll buy the equipment, I'll help with some of the remodel, you do the thing, we could be partners in this. And I was like, okay, like, and I was 24 maybe at the time. And I was like, okay, like that solves the problem, right? Like, okay, I have a partner. I think a lot of times in business, we get into partnerships for a reason because we think it's like it's a security thing of just being new to something. It's like going to a party by yourself versus going with, some friends or somebody else. There's just like this natural comfort that comes from it. So I go through this process and like think about it. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is the opportunity that I was supposed to be given. So let's rock and roll. So I started searching around, and there was this location, the original Functional Lifestyles in Palo Alto, that I kept driving by all the time on the way to work. And I realized that I was like, you know what? I really love the real estate that's mechanic shop, right? So I kind of fell in love with this mechanic shop idea of like, I think it'd be really cool to take an old mechanic shop and convert it into a gym. I'm a car guy. I'm a gym guy. I like the old school rustic look for a lot of things in life aesthetically. So I was like, okay, this is work. So that original location was something I drove by all the time. One of our other clients that worked out at Equinox was a real estate broker. And he was the one who's like, oh, I can get you connected. I know who the owner is. They actually are not doing anything with it because the end all plan is actually tear that building down. And I said, screw it, let's do it. Signed a 3-year lease, which at the time I thought was a very, very long time because up to Equinox, I don't think I had a job longer than 3 years. So for me, like the idea of a 3-year lease felt like a really, really long time. Fast forwarding till today, 8 years later in the business, I realized like, wow, that was actually maybe a dumb idea, knowing that I possibly could have got kicked out in 3 years if that actually came to fruition. But so it started to get started, and I go through all this process. And then as I'm about to sign the lease for the building, the client of mine at the time and the original investor backed out. I remember I was sitting in Santa Cruz. I was getting tattooed at the time, and I received this long text message, and it looks like a breakup text. And I just in my head, because he was kind of like a little MIA for situations, and I knew something was off. I was like, I don't know if he's like, and he basically sends me a text, and he goes, hey, I've been talking to family. I've been thinking about it. I just don't think this is going to work. I don't think the model or the idea or the business is going to generate enough money for this to be a smart investment for me at the time. And, no hard feelings towards him. It's someone else's money. I'm not going to like try to guilt trip them into anything. But for me, obviously emotionally hard of like, shit, like maybe I'm not ready to open up a gym. Maybe this is the sign the universe is giving me that I'm not ready to be doing this yet. And, a couple weeks go by, and I was like on the fence of just moving, back down to like SoCal, and like maybe I go to like the Huntington Beach Equinox that just opened up, and I just go work there, and I keep doing the training thing, and I just live the surf bum life that I want to live, But then I was like, no, I've already taken this first kind of couple steps. I found the building. I have, the lease out in front of me. I need to sign it. So I go through like a round, and I have, a couple friends and a coworker, and I get some, friend and family around is what they call it, raise a little bit of money and start the gym. I was able to basically finance all the equipment, get enough money for myself and other people to help me with the remodel. And that's how Functional Lifestyles was born. Functional Lifestyles, I've always said for me, basically had 3 different things that I wanted to solve for, right? So for me, the gym industry has always been something I've been very passionate about. Like I mentioned, something I grew up in, something I've only worked in. I didn't go to college for that reason. I just immediately went into this gym industry. And it's something personally I want to stay in for the rest of my life. And it's very easy for me to say that now. Who knows what happens 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, but it's the only light at the end of the tunnel that I look at right now as far as what my career looks like. But there was things that I wanted to solve for, right? So a lot of my career being in personal training, I did a handful of years working in CrossFit. CrossFit was one of those things, honestly, that when I left sports, I felt like a lost puppy for a little bit because I didn't really know. Like, I was like, okay, I don't have my community. I don't have a coach yelling at me. I don't have the accountability of needing to be at a practice. I didn't have the competition in my life. And that was a big part of my life throughout, school. So getting into CrossFit, one of my buddies, Ricky, who owns a gym down in Morgan Hill, he was like, dude, I'm telling you, I think you'll like CrossFit. Like it's going to solve a lot of what you're talking about. It's going to give you the community. It's going to give you a sense of competition. It's going to obviously integrate all the fitness stuff that you're kind of already doing. So CrossFit was like really the first stepping stone into me being like, oh, this is actually something I have a lot of interest in on a personal level, and maybe even just a future venture moving forward. And then it's funny because when I was 18 at the time, I remember telling my parents, I was like, oh, I'm going to open up a CrossFit gym. And I was like 18, 19. This was my second gym I worked at. And I was like, there's a building across the street. I want to do it. I need some money. And they're like, no, we're not giving you money. Like, you need to keep working. This is only your second job. Like, you need to figure it out. But there was a lot of like things that came to fruition for me. So throughout this journey, I realized that like, number one, personal training was always going to be the elite of all training. It's the best thing to provide the most amount of accountability and the most amount of specificity of what a client actually needs, right? Like, we are building a program and a system around you and your needs and wants, right? Because your programming, your mobility, your injury background, your goals, your nutritional habits, your lifestyle habits, everything is integrated around you and built around you. The only downsides that I saw to personal training is, number one, like all personal services and like anything, right? Like, it's just hard to find good people, right? It doesn't matter if it's me getting the show back up by hiring good videographers, or if it's my barber, or if it's my trainer, my chiropractor, even. It took me time to like find good people and what I really believed were like aligned for what I was looking for. So that was always a big thing that I realized about personal training, is not everyone's going to mesh well with every single trainer. Second thing is, financially, it's not that sustainable for a lot of people. Like paying 100 or 120 or 150 or, Tier X at, Equinox 180, whatever it might be. Like, it is an expensive thing to sustain multiple times a week for a long period of time. So personal training had a lot of pros, but it definitely had a handful of cons. Then when I got into CrossFit, I started to realize, I was like, oh, the group stuff is really cool, because the group training is going to solve this, the cons of kind of personal training in a sense, because it's going to give me flexibility of having a lot of class times. It's going to solve the price, dilemma, because having 20, 30, 40 people at a time pay one coach is, it's easier to be able to scale that. But then I started to realize the cons on the other side. When I was coaching CrossFit, especially with the Olympic lifting, but just like, there is a higher barrier to entry with certain, modalities of fitness. And when you think about strength and conditioning work, like what we focus on, you think about CrossFit at that time, Olympic lifting or barbell movements or gymnastics, they are things that have a very, very high level of skill required to do them successfully without injuring yourself. So I realized that if there's one of me as a coach and there's 20, 30, 40 of you as clients, you're not really getting a lot of coaching, right? And that was always the biggest con for me, is like, you're just getting a cheerleader. And I get from the business side, like from the scalability of a business, the reason why things like Barry's Bootcamp, are successful, or F45 blew up as a franchise, or Orange Theory blew up, or why CrossFit got so big when that came out, is because it is, from a scalability perspective, easy to scale, right? But when you think about the quality control of what we're talking about, you lose that really, really quick, right? And that was the thing for me that I was like, wanted to solve. So our model was kind of the first thing that was like, that I was interested in fixing, was like, okay, we're going to do a semi-private model. So originally when I opened up the gym, we started with 12 people a class and we had 2 coaches. Then I moved it down to 10 to 2. And I know there's a lot of clients, especially in Palo Alto, that would be like, I would love for you to bring back that 12 so we can actually get into certain times. But for me, it was kind of just the mission and the core values of what I really wanted to focus on. Is I wanted to have the closest thing to big group or small group, whatever you want to call it, but I wanted it to be intimate enough where the coaching was still the forefront of what we were doing. So the coaching was the thing that we started with. The coaching around the client is what we built the entire system around, right? So that's how the model kind of got developed throughout. And then when we went into the programming side, I personally, through my kind of journey of fitness and sports and CrossFit and a lot of how I got started, I got injured a lot. And it was just through, the generic stuff in sports, shoulder things, separation. I would sprain my ankle all the time. Like, you would have the general things with sports that I think come with that no matter what. But then when I got into CrossFit, I had a serious back injury that happened in the middle of a competition. And then I had a knee injury that followed probably about 6 months later. But the back injury is something still to this day I live with 15 years later. And it's been probably one of the biggest core drivers of my mission around our style of training. And this is why I'm such a big believer just on this kind of functional approach to training overall, is because moving well should be at the core and the foundation of everything we talked about. I grew up throughout my training career, as a kid in sports, both of my parents did your typical bodybuilding stuff, the push, the pull, the legs. You do a couple body parts, you do 15, 20 sets, you go home, you do that once or twice a week for each body group. So I love the idea of looking good, right? Because the aesthetics, and that's why I did a little bit of men's physique competitions. I probably did 3 or 4 of those. So I think the idea of aesthetics is something that naturally, as all humans, we're kind of attracted to as a desire or want. But when you look at the need, I think the idea of like as we get older, it's like I'm turning 34 this month. Feeling good is the most important thing to me. Looking good is great. Being strong is great. Being fast is great. Being athletic, being able to do a lot of things is always going to be at the in this conversation for me and very, very high up in that conversation. But the foundation of it was really longevity. Is like, I want to be able to do this forever. I want to be able to go snowboard in the winter. I want to be able to go surf. I want to be able to go mountain bike. I want to be able to go golf. I want to be able to play these sports and I want to feel good doing it. So I think my training should be complementary to those things outside. So when I think about this definition of what does functional fitness actually mean, or what does functional lifestyles as a methodology actually kind of focus on, it's the idea that I'm going to get you stronger, faster, and better looking, but I'm going to build it on the foundation of getting you to move better by improving your posture, improving your mobility, improving your coordination and mechanics, and allowing you to be better at everything else that you're doing outside of the gym. Because the gym is 3 hours a week for most people, right? Or for some people that come here. That's 165 hours that we're not talking about a gym. So there's a lot more time spent without the gym than there is in the gym for the majority of the population. So for me, I took this movement-based approach to strength and conditioning. Like, let's focus on performance. Let's get these clients stronger. Let's improve their aerobic capacity. Let's improve their speed and their anaerobic stuff. But make it movement-based by understanding that we're three-dimensional. That was one thing in CrossFit that was always a big argument. Like, we rotate, we laterally move, we go forward, backwards, up, and down. A lot of fitness is just spent in this linear range of motion of like, we go forward, up, forward, backwards, we go up and down. So a lot of lateral stuff, a lot of rotational stuff. Second thing, which is probably the biggest thing that I focus on overall as far as what my training is really kind of built on, is unilateral concepts. Single leg, single arm, single side. Understand the human body is asymmetrical. So that was the entire methodology and philosophy of what the programming was, right? Then we got into kind of the check-ins, right? And something I realized that throughout my career is most clients fail, including myself, when we're not looking at the outside factors, which is kind of where a lot of everything of what I'm going to kind of finish up today's episode with, of where the show came to fruition for me, where the methodology of the 6 dimensions came from, is first thing I want to bring up is 6 dimensions, right? When you think about optimal health, I've broken it up into 3 tiers. Tier number 1 is going to be 2 dimensions, movement and exercise. You can go to the gym 3 times a week and you can sit on your ass the rest of it and you're not going to be as successful with your health, right? We need to be moving. And I'm talking about not just your mobility and posture, but the amount of steps you take a day, for example, things like that. Movement and exercise are always in the same bucket. Number 2 is nutrition. What you put in your body is what you're going to get out of your body. This show and most of my platforms I communicate on, I talk a lot about these 2 dimensions because that is my area of expertise. That's where I know a lot because that's where I spent majority of my career. The second tier was kind of getting under the hood, and something that just like become more and more as part of my mission, I think, is probably really just kind of looking at these last 4. So the tier 2 is like looking at sleep and stress management, right? Like if I have a client that's not sleeping well, quality or quantity wise, everything I do nutritionally doesn't work that well. Everything I do exercise doesn't work that well. I'm not recovering well. The energy's not there. The output's not there. But then the stress management being the next one, that if I am chronically stressed, I'm chronically in this sympathetic state, I don't sleep well, which feeds it, like it just feeds up the chain, right? So looking at the body more holistically has always been kind of a big part to the entire model for us on all elements of personal functional lifestyles and the show in general. But then the last tier, which the pandemic honestly has just really gave me more and more motivation to focus more and more on these subjects, was number 5 was your community and your environment. The people and the things that you surround yourself by, the shows you watch, the music you listen to, the friends you have, the family are going to dictate how your life operates, right? Because these are external influences that are influences to your life. The last one is the core of it, which is the mindset. At the end of the day, we need to remember what goes on between your 2 ears is what's going to happen in your life. There's people that are in bad environments and in bad communities that still end up becoming successful because of their mindset. Now, it's a very rare thing to do. Like I will say, it's much easier to be in a better environment, better community, and be successful than being in a bad one and having a really, really good mindset, because influencing the mind or changing the mind is hard. So the check-ins for me was always kind of like the last part of the business, is like, hey, like what we're going to do on top of our model is like, we're going to also assign every client to a coach, and that coach is going to meet with them weekly for 3 months. And then they're going to meet with them monthly forever on. And it's meant to say, hey, how is nutrition? Hey, how is movement? How is sleep? How is stress? How is community environment? How is mindset? All these things that I just talked about. And how can I help provide you structure, but most importantly, keep you accountable to what these things and these tools that we're using to get you there. So that was like where the fruition of like functional lifestyles has kind of gone, right? Started off with one location, didn't have any marketing experience, didn't do a pre-sale, opened up the gym, signed up 40 clients by myself that first month. And it's just been something that kind of slowly has grown since then. Now, we have Mountain View location, which we opened up in November of 23. We just opened up Palo Alto 2.0 3 months ago this year. So April of 2025. We work with over 700 clients. A lot of like the growth has just become, organic over time, right? Because a lot of it for me and this entire pursuit of balance, which is the last part I want to finish with today, came from this idea that sustainability comes in balance, right? And the only way to have sustainable approaches is by integrating balance, right? And a lot of the business community and these kind of hardcore communities on fitness and business say that balance doesn't exist. And I would argue to my grave that I think balance does exist, but balance doesn't exist if the extreme measure of time is not accounted for. Meaning if like you want to do something really, really fast and really, really intensely, then yes, balance is probably not going to exist. But if you want to do something where you can have progress the rest of your life, then having balance is going to be the only way to make it sustainable. So the last little piece is like, what does pursuit of balance mean? What is this show about? What does episode 1 of season 2 actually mean? Pursuit of balance for me has been the motto to my entire life and been the motto for the business. It's on the sign, it's on the logo. And what it meant to me was this idea of happiness really comes from balance, right? And I had to go through a couple journeys in my life to figure out that I was really the happiest when I was having balance. And when I lost it, I started to lose happiness in certain areas of my life. There was a time where my social life was the most important thing to me, and my physical health suffered a little bit. My financial health suffered a little bit. And then there was times where work was the most important to me when I opened up the gym, and my physical health suffered again. And, my social life suffered, my relationship suffered a little bit. But we go through these journeys in life where we allocate more resources, energy, or time to certain buckets of life. And we realize that that's obviously generally needed for growth. But if you look at it and you zoom out in the macro, having balance throughout all these things is possible. And we need to understand that they're only possible when you think about sustainability, right? Like if I only wanted to be successful at work and I didn't give a shit about my relationship with my wife or my friends or my physical self or whatever it might be, that's a different story, right? So my biggest mission for what I talk about on every platform and mainly this show is how can I change and influence the mindset of how you run with your life? Because when you think about health, for me, health has always come in these layers of like different things. There's the physical self, right? There's the mental health. There's the emotional health, right? I even wrote them all down. The spiritual health, the financial health, the social health, the sexual health, communal and environmental health, cultural health. All these different categories of health are what we're trying to fix, right? And to do them all, you can't, like, when you think about like an example I can give everyone is sports have always been kind of something I came from. So I always use this as an example. To be a professional athlete comes with a lot of sacrifices. And most people think that these are the top tier when it comes to physical health. And this might be look or performance related. But if you think about longevity and health, athletes don't have really, really good longevity measures, right? They don't. And that's because they sacrifice so much of their age and their well-being and their physical health to be a top performer and during that period of time for sports that it comes with a lot of sacrifice. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I think about when you think about this longevity of majority of my client base is general population of people that want to look better, move better, feel better, most importantly. And when I say pursuit of balance being the model to your lifestyle, understand that there needs to be a balance in everything. You don't need to eat perfectly 7 days a week, every single meal, right? Like you can have flexibility. You can go out to restaurants. You don't need to train every day. You don't need, like, I think a lot of what we make up in our head of the things that we need to be is what makes it stressful for people. The goal is to enjoy the process. The goal is to enjoy the ride of life. And the process is enjoyable when we find the sustainability, right? So that's a lot of just kind of the personal mission, the mission for the gym, the mission for the show and everything that we're about to bring to you guys, as far as a lot of it being motivational, educational, and hopefully a little bit of entertainment in the process too. So the last thing I want to kind of just finish up with today is just like, what are the goals moving forward for me personally, for the gym and the show itself, right? And, to start off with the show, Pursuit of Balance is something that, like, I was just telling Chaz and Elliot that I was like, I shot 123 episodes over the last 3.5 years when I was with Evan, right? Then I took a 6 month break. This is episode 1 of season 2 is what we're going to call it. So I did a lot of it, right? And for me, I didn't really have a lot of intent on growth or downloads or caring how many people viewed. I didn't care if it was just my mom commenting on every time I was posting it. It was something that allowed me to have content and have a platform. Like, this is much easier for me to just spill talk for about 20, 30 minutes and then send this in a newsletter weekly to you guys. So you have, resources to come back to help educate yourself a little bit, or just to motivate you in general, or whatever that might be for you. So the growth for me would be like, I want to learn more myself. I've always been very strong and gung ho on continued education, and it comes from reading or certifications. Like, I know obviously like school was probably not my lane, but I've always been big on like certifications, workshops, education, reading every day. Like, those are always been like core values to me. But I want to learn more from people that are even better than what I'm doing in a lot of different fields, right? So bringing on nutritionists or therapists or other business owners or other local people, ideally, and allowing us to have guests and maybe go a little bit longer for those, and maybe making those 30 minutes to 60 minutes at a time, and really picking their brains to selfishly learn from them on what they've gone through as far as growth for life, or just tips on whatever kind of field that they're an expert in. But then most importantly is to share that content with you guys so that you can take home those things and hopefully most importantly apply them, right? Because at the end of the day, education is useless without the execution behind it. So giving you guys actionable items that you can take home that can influence your life in a positive way, right? Because the most important thing for me from a mission perspective is I talk about health and fitness a lot, but at the core of it, it's being happy. Like, I really just want people to be happier and be better off. And that doesn't come from you being perfect as far as physical health and what most people think fitness is about. So that's where a little bit of this kind of holistic vision comes from. So that's a lot of the growth. I don't know if it's something that, I was just telling my wife, Nikki, I was like, I don't know, maybe this could be something that's like a separate entity, or I get to travel around and go to different places and interview different people. Like, I don't know if it ever becomes something like that. But for now, the biggest mission is to stick with the same mission, is helping the current client base, helping my friends, helping my family, helping the people that do follow us and listen to us, and helping you guys improve. And hopefully you guys just organically sharing that, because the knowledge is so valuable. As far as the gym goes, I've kind of become, like, I don't want to say necessarily at a stallmate, but originally when I opened up the gym, I wanted 3 or 5 locations. Running a gym with over, I think we're at 20 coaches now, or employees in total, over 700 clients. I realized that people managing and managing a business and quality control behind that, being OCD about those things is much harder than I thought it would be, which, whatever, it's very easy to think things are going to be easy until you cross that bridge. So I'm at a point right now where I'm really, one of the things as far as like business models I've always loved, like In-N-Out's always been something I've always just appreciated. It's like, oh, it's a California brand, the quality control, how they do everything is just like on the dot, feels the same every location. Chick-fil-A was always a franchise that I respected as far as how they did their franchisees, and like they cap you to 1 or 2 locations max. And so I didn't know if the growth came from just me staying doing this myself, or it became franchise, or if it became licensing. I really, with everything, the show and the gym just for now, but everything that I do in the future, I would love to stay vertically integrated, because this is where I'm most passionate about, and this is also where I'm most educated in. So it doesn't matter if it's education for coaches, or if it's education for gym owners, or education for our clients. Education, I think, still is going to be at the core of it. But my biggest objective right now is, we got a little bit more to go in Mountain View to fill this gym up. I got obviously an entire personal training section of Palo Alto with this new location. The expansion 2.5x my space and at 3x my rent. So going from $6,000 to $18,000 in rent is definitely a little bit stressful. So there's a lot of growth just internally that I think happens without us necessarily expanding the locations. I think a lot of it could be just the continued education that's inside and internal. And then really allowing us to be really, really good at taking people, doesn't matter if it's A talent or B talent, and then having them go through our process where the continued education is something where I can get people to a really, really high level of service and knowledge with what we do as coaches. Because coaching is not just knowing how to write a program or how to correct an exercise with form. It's how to have customer experience, because at the end of the day, a successful business is going to be a balance between customer experience and customer success. And that is my biggest mission through the gym and just in general, because I think like I can help a lot more people a lot faster when I work with people that are already working with clients. I'd much rather work with coaches that have 20 clients or gyms that have 200 clients and allow them to better their experience. I think it's a lot of where the growth grows from there. But on a personal level, I think it stays within those two things. Obviously, having kids starting this year is like a big passion for mine, but really a lot of the personal stuff outside of just growing my family is a lot of what I just talked about, is keeping everything for you guys, keeping the education really at the core of what I do and talk about, because that is the thing I think that fills my cup the most. And I really want to make that the main thing and keep that the main thing. So that's a big part. I hope you guys are excited for the new rendition of this. I can't wait to see how this looks as far as the visuals and the audio and everything that these guys are going to do, because these are actual professionals. I mean, just staring at these fancy cameras is much different than what we were doing before. So that's episode 1 of season 2. I will see you guys next week for episode 2. Have a good day. See you guys later.